Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Monday morning, talking a lot of college football from over the weekend, and just bottom line, the carnage. You had Thursday, Friday, Saturday, a whole lot of games being played, and I think the biggest takeaway from it was, man, that's why they play the games. You look at it and you say, Texas A&M kills LSU. Who saw that one coming? Other than one of our guests later in the show, Mark Hamm, is going to talk with us about it. And another one that kind of caught people by, I don't know if it caught people by surprise, but, you look at, you name the game, Southern Cal, Florida, Southern Cal, Notre Dame, names all over the country. But what I'm thinking about, though, Ohio State getting just destroyed at home against when they played Michigan. And you look at that game, and now there's a narrative of a lot of people saying that Ohio State should still be in the playoff picture. They're out of their minds. And to think that any other team, Alabama, if you're going to take Alabama as an outlier, no way you do that over Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee, with the 10-2 record as well, straight up wins over Alabama and on the road at LSU. So there's a lot of arguments that can be made. Jason Caldwell is on with us this morning inside the Auburn Tigers. And Jason,
he's not.
And Jimmy Hodge will be joining us here in just a moment. But I'm just looking around me at what happened over the weekend. If there's no way, okay, the playoff teams right now you got to think are Georgia, TCU, Michigan, and probably Southern Cal. If they all win this weekend, but if you're going to take a 10-2 team from the SEC, it's Tennessee over Alabama. It's not even up for debate. But the SEC now, LSU, even if they win the SEC, are you going to take a 3-loss team into the playoff because they're SEC champion? There's a lot to talk about. But anyway, got a great show today. Jason Caldwell, Tony Barnhart, Yancy Porter, and Mark Hamm all with us on this Monday edition of Sidelines. And Jason, Jimmy, Jason, I'll start with you. I don't know what's going on with Auburn, not finding a coach yet or whatever like that. But I'm sure your phone, my phone, people are kind of like going, are we ever going to get a coach at Auburn? What's going on? But not many people like you out there that know as much and do the research that you do. What are you hearing about this Auburn coaching search?
Yeah, it's the season's been over with exactly 2 days. So that's what I say about people freaking out a little bit. But over with 2 days. This was the week that we've always said people have been wanting a coach hired the last 2 weeks. It wasn't going to happen until the season was over with. I think there would have been a chance potentially on Friday if Lane Kiffin had been the guy. And that went into Friday night and breakdowns on both sides of that one. But I think Hugh Freeze is still the guy that's in the mix. There's some other names that are in the mix too, but I think those two guys have been kind of the top guys, in my opinion, on the list from the get-go. And, we'll see what happens with that moving forward. But, yeah, the timeline has always been around this time. We'll see if that happens. The key's going to always been kind of getting somebody in place with a couple of days to prepare for Friday, which is when you can go on the road again. Super Sevens here in Auburn beginning Wednesday night this week. And for the first 2 days, Auburn coaches can't be there anyway. It's still a dead period, which, it's crazy how it works out that you can have state championship games on your campus, can't go to the game. But Friday, Auburn coaches would be allowed to go to the games and talk to high school coaches, do all those things. And, I would be absolutely floored if Auburn doesn't have anybody in place by even Wednesday. But heck, it could happen a lot sooner than that.
Jason, looking at all these names, I mean, Lane Kiffin was the hot name for a long time. I didn't see that one for some reason. I guess living in Memphis and seeing how Jimmy Sexton plays the game, and he played everybody on that one. But also look what happened to Ole Miss. Look what happened to Liberty at the end of the season, because both of their head coaches are being mentioned as candidates for the Auburn head coaching job. You think that's all due to the December signing period and coaches being fired early in the season and everybody rushing to try to get somebody in place? But it's just, again, for Ole Miss, I'm not, an Ole Miss grad. I'm not a Liberty grad. But if it was your school, you got to put yourself in those shoes. It might be a terrible fate to have your coach being pursued, because it looks like Ole Miss, they lost 4 of their last 5 games, and Liberty lost 3 in a row, got trumped by New Mexico State 42-7 Saturday.
Yeah, no, I think it's obviously distraction is part of it. I think some of it is for Ole Miss. I talked about it all year. I did not think they were particularly good. I thought they had some good pieces, but I didn't think that was a very good Ole Miss team. And I talked about that after Auburn played them. I said I think Auburn's roster's every bit as good as Ole Miss's roster. They played out. That's about who they were.
Yeah,
it shows you. I thought he did a pretty good coaching job, to be quite honest, to get them to that point. Liberty, I think some injury issues for them, especially at quarterback, probably hurt them down the stretch, having to play without their top guys, and so, and then distractions. I mean, I think it obviously it's part of what you deal with now. You look across the country, and I mean, Dan Lanning, people are like, well, he was involved with it. I don't know that had a whole lot to do with it, but Kenny Dillingham left the next day as offensive coordinator to go take another job, and so it is part of the world we live in now in college football, where you have to rush to get prepared for December in every facet of the game, whether it's recruiting, transfer portal, keeping guys out of the transfer portal. I mean, it's the way this thing works right now, and unless they change something, which I don't see how they will go back on it, it's hard to put that genie back in the bottle. This is the way it's going to be, and now you got the fallout from those things. You hire a guy. Cincinnati now has the fallout of a coach being hired at Wisconsin, and they have to deal with it. You got both sides of the equation: a school trying to capitalize on a new hire, and somebody trying to fill a hole from the previous one in a short time. So, it's the way it works now, and this December timeline is a timeline for everybody involved.
Yeah, and if you look out all over social media, there's just it's comical. It's really it's so bizarre, but it's real. And this coach is not coming. Nobody knows really. I mean, Dr. Roberts at Auburn, very, very close-knit group of people. I don't know who's on the search committee or not, but you mentioned Hugh Freeze. You're hearing names like Brian Johnson, whatever. Hugh Freeze, here's a question I'm getting right now. My phone, I've got multiple people ask me or texting me right now. Will Greg Sankey and the SEC allow Freeze to come back in the league and stuff like that? And I don't know what they can say or not say or what their role is there. But again, Jason, what do you think about that question?
I think before you ever start this process, that's something you cross that bridge before you get down the road. And so, I mean, I don't think that's anything now. I think if he's the guy, then I think, I mean, it's been a while, and it's been a while since everything happened at Ole Miss, and so I think that's a bridge that you have crossed. I mean, here's what I wrote this morning: nobody, and nobody outside of maybe somebody in a courtroom would have more information than what John Cohen and President. Like, that's what they've been. They've been information gatherers for 3 weeks, and so they've turned over every stone, every leaf. If they feel like he's the guy, and he's the guy, then nobody has more information to make that choice than they do. Will it be the right one? Nobody knows. Because I remember a couple of years ago, the vast majority of Auburn fans going, hey, outside the box hire for Brian Harsin. Way to go. Good job. Love it. How'd that turn out? You never know. You just don't know. Everybody laughed at Brett Bielema being hired at Illinois. How'd that turn out? Same thing with Shane Beamer. Those hires turned out pretty good. You just don't know. We'll know in a couple of years. Whoever takes over, whoever's the guy, has a major rebuild to do on the line of scrimmage in year one. That's what we do know at Auburn. But they also have a guy at quarterback. Yeah. If it's like Hugh Freeze, Robbie Ashford, from what I saw this year, is ahead of where Malik Willis was when he left Auburn. Now, will he get to where Malik Willis was at Liberty? Who knows? But I think Robbie Ashford's a guy that is intriguing, no matter who the next coach at Auburn is, to have a quarterback to maybe build some things around and go from there. So we'll see what happens. But like I said, it'll be 2 or 3 years before we figure out if his hire works or not.
Yeah, and looking out there recruiting-wise, Cadillac and the staff have been doing a hell of a job, trying to keep it together. Got a flip from LSU last week. Where does Auburn stand in the top 33 players in Alabama? I know that figure we kept getting, they were in on 3 of the top 33 in a year with 22 4-stars and 7 5-stars. Has that changed any in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, no, you got a commitment from Darren Reed from Carver, Columbus, so close by, but a 4-star kid is a top 247 prospect. Been on campus a bunch and committed.
Yeah.
Said he wanted to be at Auburn. He liked Auburn, and
yeah.
We've seen that from guys like Clay Whedon and others going, hey, it's about Auburn and wanting to be there. Now that what happens with the entire staff moving forward. I think that obviously Cadillac Williams is going to have an opportunity if he wants it to stay and be a part of a new staff, no matter if he winds up being the head coach or if he's a associate head coach, something. I think he will be involved, which would be obviously a big boost for Auburn. Zach Etheridge and you got Christian Robinson. There's other folks that could remain on the staff to kind of bridge the gap. Obviously, that's a big part of it. So that's going to be something that and ultimately determines maybe what you look like with guys like James Smith and Quay Russaw, a Tony Mitchell from Thompson, the 5-star Alabama DB commitment that has been on campus a bunch. Will be playing in Jordan-Hare on Wednesday night against Auburn High School, and so all those things kind of factor in to see how the dust settles here, maybe in a couple of days, and what this staff might look like.
Have this period. I've seen some fast turnarounds before, but how much ground do you think Auburn can make up?
Yeah. Sorry, you were a little muted early on. I couldn't hear you to begin with. You're talking about making up ground in just the roster itself. Yeah, I think it's obviously you got to kind of find a way to make up some ground. And from a roster standpoint, Jimmy, I don't know, when you look at it, that's the biggest thing. You look at what like LSU's done and what some of these other teams have done from the portal. That's the quickest way to get there is to try to find some transfers. And obviously that's something that Auburn's going to have to do no matter who the head coach is.
Yeah, I think Auburn's going to have a good opportunity to do that because, you're in the SEC, and a lot of these young players that might have gotten overlooked as high school prospects by these Power 5 schools have proved themselves to be very good players in the group of 5 and even smaller schools. And you get a chance, if you've evaluated these players accurately, they can come on the scene. We've seen it all over the country and make a big splash with their new programs at the Power 5 level. And I think with a new coaching staff that could give some energy to the program, they can make up some ground in a hurry. And I've got to say, I was really impressed with just the way that Ashford played on Saturday, because they beat him to a pulp. And he just got up every play, was ready for more. And if you can find a coaching staff that can really work with his fundamentals in the passing game, I think you've really got a dangerous package there, because I think that's the most obvious thing to me when I see him when he goes back to throw. Obviously, with his running ability, he can do damage, even if opposing teams know he's going to run.
Yeah.
But when he originally goes back there, though, if he can get that confidence in his passing game, he can really be dangerous. And I think if a coaching staff can just work with him day after day, hour after hour, just on executing the basic fundamentals, getting your footwork right, stepping into throws, get your shoulders square to the target you're throwing, I think you really got something here.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about him is he dealt with a sprained AC joint and had a couple of other injuries that he's been dealing with for about the last month or so. And you look back to maybe like the LSU game. I mean, he threw for 300 yards against LSU, and so he kind of was on a little bit of trajectory. You throw some injuries in and then change offensive coordinator, having to put together a game plan and guys going, okay, look, let's run the football. And hey, they did a great job of that. I thought Will Friend and Ike Hilliard and that offensive staff were pretty remarkable, the things they did. They ran for over 300 yards against Alabama. This is the most without really a passing game. They ran for the most yards that a Nick Saban coach team has given up at Alabama since he's been there, which is pretty remarkable. But it does show you the difference between talk and being able to put that into action. For 2 years, we heard that they want to be a run-first physical football team under Brian Harsin, but they didn't know how to put that into action. And we saw just a motion, formation, some of the things they did in scheme allowed them to be able to run the football. And so now you look and go, it was more about the right guys and putting those things in place. And that's the job of the next coach. And that's who the guys that do it the best, that's what they do, is adapt.
Quick.
Can you find a guy to adapt?
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Kitchens and bathrooms make a home, and the design teams at Kitchens Unlimited know how to make kitchens and baths. They know it all because they have seen it all. Kitchens Unlimited has been designing and remodeling the Mid-South's kitchens and baths for over 50 years. Check out their showroom at 3550 Summer Avenue or visit them on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
If you have a crash, dent or ding, go to G.E. Patterson and BBG for Tom Martin's Body Shop.
Come on down to Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, located on Historical Square in Collierville, Tennessee. Hewlett & Dunn is the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast, stocked with Southern brands you know and trust. And a new inventory arriving all the time. Do yourself or someone you know and love a favor and visit this store. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
As an agricultural producer, no matter where you farm, minimum tillage is a primary concern each and every season. At House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, we manufacture equipment to help you maximize efficiency when planting and watering a crop. Pieces like the pulverizer, bedder roller, 3-bar do-all, and bed conditioner assist you in optimizing seedbed preparation and ultimately your bottom line. Visit HouseIndustriesInc.com to locate the dealer nearest you.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Jason, when you think about the quarterback situation with Auburn, Robbie Ashford, look what Jalen Hurts, what they've done with him up at Philadelphia. So that's a case of working with the guy on his mechanics and all. And I know a year under Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma didn't hurt. So talk about the future with Auburn quarterbacks. I mean, Holden Gehringer, he's not that kind of a speed quarterback. It all depends on what the new coach does coming in. But that's a very telling statement that you made, that Robbie Ashford is further along in his Auburn career right now than Malik Willis was when he was at Auburn. That's a powerful statement. And what if Hugh Freeze comes in? He's pretty darn good at coaching quarterbacks, isn't he?
Yeah, I think it's it. The key, we're talking about right before the break is the key is adjusting, and the key is adaptability. Can you adapt to your talent? The best coaches do those things, and we no matter who it is, what you're doing, adapting to the guys you have, and right now, you look at Alabama, and you go to Alabama, like if Alabama lined up and was playing 2008 Alabama football and took the ball out of Bryce Young's hands, they'd have 5 losses right now. They're like, look, the best chance we got is for that guy to be back there scrambling around and making plays in the passing game.
Yeah.
And that's what they've had to do. You look at Auburn at the end of the season going, look, the only chance for them to win football games was to line up and run the football. And it helped out the defense. It made them better. Now that they weren't very good at the end of the year because Alabama had the best player on the field. But you look at Robbie Ashford and look at the potential of him. He hadn't played football in 2 years. I mean, not a snap. I mean, 0. And then he wasn't a starter to begin this year. So you look at it and you think about, normally, guys that are, the starter get all of those preseason reps. They get all those things in camp. Well, he was sharing those with 3 different guys, and Holden Geriner was the 4th. Then all of a sudden he's thrust into it. And game week, it's hard to really – Jimmy talked about it. It's hard to be a fundamental guy during game week because you're working on game plan and do those things. And then you had the season turned upside down. So I think Robbie is a really intriguing guy as you head into 2023.
Well, without him, where would Auburn be? He gives you a chance on every play. Jason, I got to ask you, SEC officiating, the punt, and that's not the reason Auburn lost the game, but I mean, how did they miss that? That call,
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that people just get so tired of. And then because it's obvious, hey, we got to have as many highly ranked teams in the conference. Maybe there's a chance Alabama gets in the playoff. I mean, that missing a call like that was a momentum changer at the time. But again, as much as I wanted Auburn to win, they weren't gonna. I just don't think they were gonna win that game. But it's on principle, and I don't care if it was to Alabama, Auburn, or Georgia, whoever. You got to get that call right. And it must have been blind referee day.
Yeah, it's just not a great look when you look back and see, because if you look at the front angle, it was hard to tell. And I'll tell you this, the angle that I saw from above later after the game where you could see the ball in front of his hands was never shown. We never saw that.
No.
How
convenient.
I'm assuming everything is available to the SEC replay guys. I'm assuming that. But we never saw that one in the stadium. And of course, that doesn't matter. Those guys aren't making the decision anyway. It always makes me laugh that they're putting on headphones and they're watching the play when they don't have any impact on making that call. They're just sitting there waiting for somebody to tell them what to do. And so, it just not a great look. You're right. Auburn's not going to win that football game, even with that. Now, had Auburn not turned it over and gotten a couple of turnovers, then it might have made a difference in that game because the offense was able to move the football. But, if Alabama plays mistake-free football and essentially the interception there at the end was, it had no impact on the game. It was going to be next to impossible for Auburn to go to Tuscaloosa and win anyway.
Yeah, it is. That's tough to do. You're right. But in the case of Alabama, it looks like all these coaches leaving every year. It's caught up with them, and they're not the same. You're right. Without Bryce Young, they're 5-5, 6-4, or maybe I'd say they're 7-5, 8-4. He's that good of a player, and I don't know how he's not going to win. I don't know if he's going to win the Heisman this year, but Bryce Young should win the Heisman because there is no better player, no more important player on any team who carries a team on his back more than Bryce Young. And he's, for all things that I can tell, seems like a good guy. And I hope he wins it again. I don't care who you're a fan of. He'd be the right choice for me. Jason, a couple of more things. I got to ask you, this Auburn basketball team right now, what's the takeaway from what you've seen so far? Is this a team that can go deep, or is it too early to tell? But one thing Bruce Pearl is going to have on the floor is guys that play defense and play a full 40 every game.
Yeah, you just never know because it's all about matchups when you get in the NCAA tournament. It's all about matchups. And, getting hot a couple of days. This team can do that. I think over the long haul, it's going to be hard to see this team competing for an SEC championship right now as it stands. Now if they start to get more offensive flow and do some things, yeah, I think they'll be a team that can do that. Right now, it's hard to see that. Now, they're going to be tough to beat at home, no matter who it is. But Auburn fans better get used to it. They're going to be a lot of grinded out games, and that it's going to be a one possession game in late in the second half, and when you got to play defense and make free throw. There's going to be a lot of those basketball games for this team because they're going to be, I think I look at this league and I mean Alabama's really talented. Arkansas is really talented. Both those teams are young, but you see the capability of those teams doing what they've done. Obviously, Kentucky's there. Tennessee, I was told before the year, Tennessee may be the most talented team in the league, and they went out and played some pretty good basketball already. LSU's got some new guys. Mississippi State, Ole Miss. I mean, it's really good again. Florida with Castleton. It's going to be a really, really difficult league once again, and to be able to grind it out and make some of those games, that's going to be the difference in maybe seeding down the road. But once you get an NCAA tournament, hey, it's all about matchups and one day, one game, and it's hard to predict.
All right, last thing. You think maybe by Wednesday, possibly Thursday, Auburn has a new coach. Hugh Freeze, you're saying, is definitely still in the mix because then you hear Brian Johnson, but give me your top 3 candidates. And I know you gave 2, but let's do that again one more time.
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't even know that what names I would even involve. I think Hugh Freeze is a guy that I still would put as the favorite at this point. If that changes, then I think you could be looking at potentially a guy like Brian Johnson. I think is potentially involved. I still think Cadillac Williams could be involved if you start to move on a little bit there. And so I would be really surprised if there's not something done here in the next couple of days.
All right, Jason, tell them how they can follow you, and always appreciate your time here on Sidelines. We love it.
Yeah, you can check us out at auburnundercover.com. autigers.com is a part of the 24/7 network, and you can also follow me on Twitter at ITATJason.
All right, Jason, thanks so much. Have a great week.
Thanks, guys. Y'all too.
All right. We're going to be joined by Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, the media guides here in a second. Jimmy, lost you there briefly, but you think about the Brian Johnson hire. That would be interesting if it's not Hugh Freeze. Luke Fickell was a possibility, I thought. He's now the head coach at Wisconsin. Is Brian Johnson, what does he bring to the table other than he's a pretty good quarterback coach?
Yeah, he's a newer generation coach. Don't think he's been a head coach before. And to me, where Auburn is right now, I think that's absolutely critical. They have to have a guy with head coaching experience. But again, it just depends how everything develops, how the mindset might change of the people making the decision. But I wanted to contrast how a coaching search that's high profile should be conducted in contrast to how one shouldn't be conducted. And as far as I'm concerned, Wisconsin handled their coaching search perfectly. I mean, nobody even knew that they were zeroing in on Luke Fickell until yesterday morning. And then last night, the announcement becomes official, or late afternoon. Whereas with this Auburn situation, I mean, especially with the coach as high profile and quote unquote controversial as Lane Kiffin, everything's got to be absolutely under the radar. Nothing can come out at all until Friday or Saturday at the earliest. And yet, we've been hearing about this for the better part of 2 weeks. It's got to be a distraction for Ole Miss, their game preparation and all of that stuff. And then you hear, all of the Auburn speculations. So, that wasn't a good look at all. And then if what you hear is true, that the big issue with Kiffin was that he wanted Saban-like control over the football program. And we all know that that's never going to happen at Auburn. And that should have been discussed at the very outset, whether it was between Jimmy Sexton and the decision makers at Auburn, or even if Kiffin might have been a party, and just getting updates from Sexton on this.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff, and I've got my thoughts as well. Tony Barnhart joins us, Mr. College Football, the media guides over in Atlanta. And Tony, welcome to Monday's edition of the College Football and Basketball Blitz on Sidelines. And we're talking a lot of football over the weekend, rivalry weekend. Auburn's still looking for a coach, and talk about what's going on at Georgia Tech before we do anything else. I want to know what you think about their situation.
Georgia Tech situation?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see this hire. I've talked to a number of Tech people about it.
Mm-hmm.
I told them, I said, you need to go find the next Josh Heupel and hire him. Because Georgia Tech, from a recruiting standpoint, they're not going to out-recruit the University of Georgia. They're not going to get more offensive and defensive linemen, which is really the key to everything. But what they can do is what Willie Fritz has done at Tulane. Jamie Chadwell has done it at Coastal Carolina, has figured out how to use quarterbacks in ways for little people to beat big people. And I think that's where Georgia Tech needs to go, because they're not going to recruit at the Georgia, Alabama, Auburn level. They have to recruit at a different level and figure out how to win games. As much as Paul Johnson was cussed at, Paul Johnson won a lot of games when he was Georgia Tech running that option. Why? Because it was a system, and it was a system he could recruit to. So it's good. That's why this is going to be such an interesting hire.
Auburn's coaching situation. It's all over the place, been going on since Halloween. They fired Brian Harsin, but a lot of names been mentioned in there. Any candidate really stand out to you that you think Auburn is still in on, and who's your wild card hire? We all remember the wild card Christmas Eve Brian Harsin hire, but I'd like to get your thoughts.
Well, for me, the best fit at Auburn, I've said this several times, is Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze checks all the boxes they need. Now, you have to sit down as a university with your president, with your athletic director, with your board, and say, okay, this guy's got some baggage. It has enough time passed where we can feel good about hiring this guy? Because listen, from a pure football standpoint, he's exactly what Auburn needs. Creativity on offense, quarterback development, recruiting, all the issues. So after that, I have no idea.
Yeah, and it's maybe that's a good thing. It's just could be somebody. We're hearing Brian Johnson from the Eagles. That's a possibility. All right, so now college football playoff. I got another one for you before I go to Jimmy. Right now, looks like Georgia, Michigan, Southern Cal, TCU, Ohio State, and Alabama. Alabama's argument, I think, is killed by Tennessee beating them head-to-head and beating LSU on the road. But Ohio State's the one. As soon as they lost 45-23 in Columbus Saturday, there was everybody on TV trying to talk them back in to the playoff. What do you think is going on, and who do you think is going to end up being the top four?
Well, right now on Tuesday night when they release the standings, the new standings, top four are going to be 1 Georgia, 2 Michigan, 3 TCU, and 4 USC. That's your top four. That's what it's going to be. The question is, who's number 5? That's the key, because the number 5 team is the more likely team to move in should one of the top 4 get upset on Championship Saturday. I think it's going to be Ohio State. As bad a loss as that was. And I will say this, the committee has always said it places a very big premium on wins. Well, guess what? Ohio State's got 11 wins, and Alabama and Tennessee have 10. So we'll see. If they put Alabama into the 5 hole, that tells you all you need to know. If somebody loses, if TCU loses, Michigan lose. I think Michigan will probably still be in, but watch and see who's number 5, and that tells you who's going to. If somebody stumbles, who's the likely team to move up?
So you talk about the committee looks at total number of wins versus strength of schedule. Because if you look at that, Michigan and Ohio State are way down the list when compared to, Georgia's schedule. They look at the number of teams they've played. their win-loss records. Georgia's not getting any credit really by a lot of I don't think they're getting enough. And I'm not saying that just because I'm an SEC man, but that's a pretty damn good football team. And they've been asked, the bell rung against two big-time national opponents. Oregon, I don't care if it was in Atlanta or Portland. They stomped Oregon 49-3.
Mhm.
Tennessee, they held the number one offense in the country to no touchdowns for 55 minutes, and it rained on both teams. It doesn't matter. Hey, you know what? Tennessee played in the rain Saturday against Vanderbilt and won 56-0. I didn't hear anybody complaining about that.
Well, Georgia is the most complete team, has been the most complete team all year. When you look at it, offense, defense, special teams, they've been good all year long. Now, there have been times when they really only were in danger of one time of losing, and that was the game at Missouri where they had to come from behind. The rest of them, they've looked sloppy at times, but they were never in any danger of losing the game. Listen, Georgia's situation is very, very clear. They are the number one seed now, and if they beat LSU, they'll be the number one seed when it comes time. Now, if the committee throws us a curveball and moves Michigan up to number one, I don't think they'll do that. But that would be interesting. Understand what Georgia wants. Georgia wants to be the number one seed so they can begin the playoffs in Atlanta. That's a really big deal.
Well, yeah, I don't blame them. And it's incredible to watch the national narrative that is pushed by a lot of people for these Big Ten schools over the SEC. Like Jimmy says, last 50 years, 2.5 versus 19 national titles for the SEC. We're going to take a quick break. Be right back with Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, the media guides, and Jimmy Hodge. Rob Browne with you right after this.
Hey everyone, my name is David Wisdom.
And I'm Shelby McNeil, and we're attorneys with Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959, right in the heart of Auburn, Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
Okay, Rob Browne back with us. Tony Barnhart, Jimmy Hodge. And Tony, I just think the interest right now, and we've said it a lot on the show, the way this season's coming down, it's begging for that 12-team playoff. And but I think the interest in college football, did you see the numbers on the Cowboys-Giants game from Thursday? 42 million. I think it's the highest number of viewers ever for an NFL game. Is that correct? Regular season.
Wow. Yeah, no, I had not seen that. I was doing some other things on Thanksgiving. But that is surprising. The NFL puts out an incredible product. They really do. Particularly last year doing the playoffs was as good a high a level of football as I've ever seen. I don't follow the NFL hardly at all, but they put out a great product, and that's why teams like Alabama get on TV a lot. You know why? Because a lot of people watch them.
Yeah.
Okay? Same thing with the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys are always involved on Thanksgiving. Why? Because a lot of people watch them.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody watched. We were 20 people together eating, and everybody was watching that game. And they don't even, people that don't even watch the NFL. You're right. Jimmy Hodge, come on in here with Tony Barnhart.
Yeah, Tony, I wanted to get your opinion on this. It seems like when we get to that final poll, with the playoff committee that determines what 4 teams are going to be in, it seems like the football coaches on the committee really start to get involved. They really start to use their influence because they know good football teams when they see them. And they feel real strongly about comparing 2 or 3 teams that are vying for that number 4 spot. The eye test is big for them. And yet also, and now Andy Staples used this analogy a couple of weeks ago. He said from talking to people that have known members of the committee that when it gets to that number 4 team, the big question, and this is what the football coaches go by, if Alabama played Ohio State head to head on a neutral field, who would win that game? And this is no matter what year it is. In past years, that is what they've used. And that's the analogy I think that Alabama got in 2017 over Ohio State, because you can't lose by 5 touchdowns to an unranked conference opponent like Ohio State did to Iowa, 55-24. And then in 18, they lost 49-20 to an unranked Purdue team. If you have a loss like that, that's just, in my mind, a hard thing to overcome. And to get beat by 3 touchdowns at home, going away by a Michigan team that was, let's just put it politely, fortunate to beat Illinois the week before at home. I just don't see, and you combine the fact that Ohio State's schedule strength, I think, is 66. They played 2 ranked teams, Penn State and Michigan. I just don't know how you have an argument for them. And then TCU, we've talked about them, despite the fact that they could easily have 4 or 5 losses. But at the same time, they've won all those games, and I think they have more victories over ranked teams than anybody in this discussion. And if they lost on Saturday, they have enough of those victories, I think, that they could be in anyway, unless they got blown out on Saturday. So that makes the discussion really interesting. But you look at Alabama, 2 losses on the last play of the game, with a quarterback who basically played 4 games in which he did not throw a pass in practice any of those weeks leading up to those games, including Tennessee and LSU, but yet, played great. But now he's back to 100%, and you can see what kind of player he is.
Well, I think you're right in that the coaches do get involved more at the very end, and when they're looking at that final spot, they do bring. Who would you remember Scott Frost, the quarterback at Nebraska? He was making the case in '97 that Nebraska deserved a share of the national championship. And Scott Frost did his post-game press conference. I was there in Miami, and he said, "Coaches who voting on the coaches poll, which team would you rather not play, us or them?" And
Michigan, that was the year.
Championship. Coaches voted them in. So the coaches do, and the coaches, in my time of doing all this, the coaches for the most part really like Alabama. I think Alabama is a well-coached team with a lot of really good players, and I think it'll be a heck of an argument. That's why who's number 5 on Tuesday night is critical, because if they go ahead and put Ohio State ahead of Alabama at number 5, that tells you everything you need to know.
Well, strength of schedule is just it's unbelievable. Like Jimmy said, Ohio State's way back. Michigan's not too far from them. And they go in there at Ohio State. And Roman Harper was on the show with us the end of last week on Friday. He pointed that out about Ryan Day's inability in the big games to make a difference. I'm surprised that Ohio State, I wasn't surprised Michigan beat them. I was surprised they beat them that bad. But they are the national media's team in sports.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to watch, because it could all go chalk. I mean, Georgia, Michigan, TCU, and USC are all capable of winning. Then it's easy. It only gets complicated as if USC loses to Utah, and guess what? USC's already lost to Utah once. Can they do it? Can they do it again? I mean, I really like Utah. They're a very, very well coached team. Michigan, I don't think we have any concerns about Michigan losing. TCU could certainly lose. So it's again, watch to see who number 5 is. If 5, it'll be Tennessee, or it'll be Tennessee, Alabama, or Ohio State. And so let's see what the committee tells us.
Tony, do you like the Matt Rule hire by Nebraska?
Yeah, I really do. He is exactly what they need now. Let's don't kid ourselves, guys. The Nebraska situation is not the same job as it was when Dr. Tom Osborne was there. All right. Yeah. They're in the Big Ten. Recruiting is problematic. It's hard for them to go into Texas now because they don't play those schools anymore. And so Matt Rule's got to figure out the recruiting end of this thing, because what's wrong at Nebraska? What's wrong with Nebraska? What's wrong with Nebraska is they don't have very many elite football players at all. Right. And that's got to change. When you look at the teams that are playing, have a chance to get in the playoffs, when you look at USC and TCU and Michigan and Georgia, Alabama, they have a lot of elite football players. Nebraska has very few, if any.
Looking at South Carolina and Clemson game, that was an unbelievable week. South Carolina beats 2 top 10 teams. What's happening with Clemson? They've been trying to make DJ a star, and he came in as a 5-star, but they're just not the same team. And South Carolina with Shane Beamer, it's like they've been holding back Spencer Rattler all year. His last 2 weeks, I mean, he's put up Heisman Trophy type numbers, like he was the number 1 Heisman pick last year. Kind of talk about what's going on over Columbia and Clemson.
Well, first of all, let's start with Clemson. Clemson's in a situation where they're trying to be loyal to DJ. They're trying to stick with him because he's very, very talented, but he's very inconsistent. The young man that they recruited from Texas was an elite recruit and played well when he's been in there. And in the offseason, that's something that Clemson's going to have to address. Defensively, they're a pretty good football team for the most part. They got really torched up pretty good on Saturday. And so I think Dabo Swinney has some big decisions to make. I'm not sure he did himself well in his staff replacements after Tony Elliott and and the coaches went to Oklahoma.
Brent Venables,
Brent Venables, and so that's an issue there. South Carolina, you got to give Shane Beamer and his staff a lot of credit. They got embarrassed. They got humiliated by a 6-6 Florida team 3 weeks ago, and Shane Beamer didn't throw his team under the bus. Said, "Hey, we didn't play well. That happens. We got a good football team. We're going to be just fine." And then, of course, they win those 2 back-to-back top 10 games behind Spencer Rattler. So good for them. 8-4, second season at South Carolina. Yeah, I think you take that. Those are big, 2 huge building blocks for that program.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at. I saw Frank Beamer on the sidelines in the Tennessee game, but they go up there on the road to win 31-30. The way they did it was amazing. Is Shane Beamer your SEC Coach of the Year?
I'm making a case. He certainly deserves it. I'm making a case for Kirby Smart, and here's why. People make great assumptions that, boy, it's really easy to coach great players. You know, all you got to do is put your head out there and let them play. Think about what Kirby Smart and his staff have done this year. They lose 8 draft choices off their entire defense, 5 in the first round. 15 players overall, I think, is the number. I might be off by 1 or 2. So nobody gave them a chance. Now, everybody picked them to win the East. We understand that. But what they've done to go 12-0 for the second consecutive year, the first time in school history they've done that, every game they're going to get everybody else's best shot. They had one game where they were in danger of losing, and that was the Missouri game, and they managed to find a way to win that game on the road. So I just think Kirby Smart has done an incredible job. And the guys with the great players, Nick Saban should have been SEC Coach of the Year a number of times for the job he's done with elite players. So while Shane Beamer deserves it, I just put in a little plug in this morning's column to give Kirby Smart some credit.
Yeah, and I don't think he gets the credit he deserves. I would agree with you. I think you make great points. And you look at some people have all the money in the world. Mike Tyson blew through $450 million. You know, it's hard to manage a lot of money. It's hard to manage a lot of talent, just trying to keep everybody happy. One other thing, talking about Florida. Watch that game. We all did Friday night, Florida State and Florida. Mike Norvell doing the job he's doing at Florida State. What kind of ceiling do you see with them? And are they going to push Clemson for supremacy in the ACC next couple of years?
I think so. I think so. I think he's done really good. There were people who wanted him gone. He's in over his head, and the guy said, be patient with us. So that, and oh, by the way, they beat LSU in the opener in a very wretchedly ugly game, but they won the game. And so, I think they will. I think they will challenge, and he's done a really good job there. And I will say this: I know a lot of Gators. 6-6 is not what they were thinking this year.
We had Buddy Martin on the show with us Saturday on the roundtable that we do, and he's just frustrated. I mean, Anthony Richardson's a talent, but there was a point in the game he had 12 consecutive missed passes. Do you think he comes back next year?
It depends on who the options are. Is he going to do they believe that Anthony's going to be okay? He just has to learn more and learn how to play the position better. That's why coaches get the big bucks. That's why to make those kind of decisions. And if he's not, then you got to go out and recruit. I don't follow recruiting, but I would imagine they have recruited a very good quarterback since they've been there. And you may just have to say Anthony Richardson is a very, very talented young man, but he does not grasp the nuances of the quarterback position. Yeah. Could be. I don't know. I'm not saying that you're going to throw the guy on the bus, but Florida. I don't think I'm stepping out on a limb if I say for Florida to go where they want to go, they have to get better quarterback play. Yeah. I don't think I'm stepping out of line there.
You're dead on. Right. It's got to get better. Jimmy, we got time for one more quick question before Tony has to go. So let's roll.
Well, as we're approaching D-Day on Sunday for the announcement of those playoff teams, you mentioned Tennessee, and I think they would probably be number 6 at this point. But I wanted to get your take on them, because anytime you lose to a team by 4 touchdowns, and that team got annihilated 7 days earlier by Florida in the swamp, and again with the coaches, man, that close to the final selection, that has to be damaging. And you consider the Georgia game, which was considered until Ohio State Michigan Saturday the biggest game of the year, and even though the final score didn't indicate it, they were dominated in that Georgia game. What are your thoughts on Tennessee? Do you think 6 is the right spot for them?
Yeah, I think it is going to be the right spot. I would tend to put Tennessee ahead of Alabama because they won head-to-head. But one of my friends who does this a lot said, "Yeah, that's true." But in the rules, when a team like Tennessee loses their quarterback, the committee has the right to factor injuries into consideration. They do it in the NCAA basketball tournament all the time. The committee on the basketball tournament has a very specific mandate. If the team is not the same because they've lost a star player, you must take that in consideration. And I think that's the consideration here. If Tennessee had its quarterback, it would be different. But the fact of the matter is Tennessee doesn't have its quarterback. And, oh, by the way, Alabama's got a pretty good quarterback.
Yeah. Tony,
we're about 100% now.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. Tony, I know you've got to get on to another meeting. Let people know how they can follow you and all the great work you're doing. And I want to tell you again how much we appreciate you taking time when you join us on Sidelines. It means the world to us, and our listeners and viewers love having you on.
Well, thanks. My old newspaper buddies and I started a website 4 years ago, and it's under the Sports Illustrated umbrella. We're happy to be working with them. It's si.com/college/TMG, or just do a Google on TMG College Sports. TMG stands for the Media Guides. And we do a lot of stuff. There's about 4 of us. We write several times a week. We have a podcast that we put up on Friday. I do a sort of a monologue every week, a football memories called Sweet Tea with Tony B, and we're having a lot of fun with that. So a lot of good content there, and check it out.
Well, I will say this, reading what you put out is like, again, lifting weights with your brain, but I like doing it because you find out so much more than just the quick 8-10 second sound bites. And that's why we don't have the newspapers that we had, but the web presence is out there. So the media guides, folks, if you love college football year round, it doesn't ever stop. You need to be reading what Tony Barnhart and his group, 150 years, Tony, combined experience.
151 years of combined experience in the newspaper business.
Look, you cannot beat that, man. Thanks so much for being on with us. We're going to take a quick break. Be right back with Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline in Oxford. See what's going on over there. Should be fun. Be right back.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Jimmy. I know that feeling trying to get back. I'll run in here and I trip over wires and everything. Welcome back to Sidelines here. Rob Browne, Jimmy Hodge with you. Hour number 2 coming up. Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. We'll check in just a minute. Jimmy, I thought that was a very telling series of comments and statements by Tony Barnhart in the previous segment. The committee will take into account that Hendon Hooker is out. Now, Joe Milton has a cannon for an arm, but he has the soft touch of, King Kong.
Blacksmith.
He's so strong. That guy has an arm. He threw a 65-yard pass Saturday night in the Vandy game. It's like he's flicking his wrist. But if he can get those short and intermediate passes, better touch on him, that guy he's outstanding. Look, he signed with Michigan. Then he came to Tennessee, was the starter, lost the job. Hendon Hooker beat him out. But I'll tell you what I was most impressed with. Those two on the sidelines, the way they interacted with one another. Tennessee's got some great chemistry on that team. Nobody's got the perfect locker room, but they got a lot of good things happening. Tennessee is your number 5 or 6 team. Ohio State, forget about it. I mean, Jimmy, I'm going to let you tear into this, but just because there's a lot of guys, and I don't hate the Big Ten, but there's a lot of guys that look like Larry Bud Melman, and Harry Carey and Archie Bunker sitting in cloth chairs with white socks drinking PBR, Hamm's beer, and Croyson beer that watch those Big Ten games. But that doesn't mean an Ohio State team that just got curb stomped at home deserves to be back in the playoff conversation. No way, no how. Jimmy, slam dunk this one.
Well, again, coming into this game, I mean, they had played one ranked team, which was Penn State. And that was a Penn State offense that made that new look Ohio State defense, which was supposed to be so dramatically improved. They made Ohio State look really ordinary for most of the game, but Ohio State offensively, they just overwhelmed Penn State, and they pulled away in the fourth quarter. But you're also talking about an Ohio State team that struggled mightily for 3.5 quarters against a 1-11 Northwestern team 3 weeks ago. But with all that being said, I thought the way that Michigan had been outplayed at home by Illinois made it just hard for me to come up with a scenario in which Michigan was going to win the game. And if you watch the beginning, Ohio State first possession They just went right down the field, 75 yards for a touchdown. Michigan was able to counter with the field goal. And I thought on the second drive, Ohio State was in the process of doing the same thing. Michigan came up with the big stop, kept them off the board, and that allowed the Wolverines to settle into the game. And then at that point, again, with Jim Knowles coming from Oklahoma State as the new defensive coordinator, everybody thought this Ohio State defense had what they needed to win the national championship, but they stayed in that cover zero look in which there's no free safety. They were blitzing players in passing situations. And if you complete the pass and that one guy misses the tackle, there's nobody left. And that's what happened on 3 big touchdown passes. And same thing on the running play. They run blitzed. If you don't make that tackle at the line of scrimmage, Donovan Edwards, he runs 85 yards for a touchdown and 75 yards for a touchdown on the same play. Oh, it had to be humiliating for Ryan Day.
Yeah, and it is. And Roman Harper Friday morning pointed that out. And I tell you what, RPI, Roman's Power Index. I love that. Roman knows his football. Another guy that knows his football, his basketball, and his good Southern music, a former roadie for Leonard Skinner, The Widespread Panic, and Bob Dylan, Yancy Porter from Oxford, Mississippi joins us. Yancy, you're a busy man.
How are you, my man?
Damn, I'm doing great. You're down in Mississippi, back in Oxford, and we are what a wild weekend. Nothing exciting been going on in Oxford the last few weeks. But we had you on Saturday. That was a lot of fun. You were driving back with your son from North Carolina. Let's talk about what's going on with the coach thing. Lane Kiffin, at first, I just never was buying he was leaving because I'm from Memphis, and I see how Jimmy Sexton works. And a guy, Hugh Freeze, I've asked so many people about him. This guy gets trashed on social media for some stuff that happened 6 years ago. And there's so many narratives out there on him. You can't hire him. He's this, he's that. Okay. Well, when you go to people that actually know the facts, don't ever let the truth get in the way of a narrative that you or a group of people are pushing. And I've got some texts from some smart people out there that have said Auburn people are losing their minds trying to run off and make the Hugh Freeze hire not happen. I don't know who Auburn's going to hire, but y'all look like you're going to keep your coach, Lane Kiffin. Does he have some fences to mend back in Oxford? And going forward, talk about that and talk about, whatever you want to talk about, including that freeze warning down in Auburn.
Well, I guess I'll touch on the freeze. First of all, I've spoken highly about Freeze many times in the past, and I said that Freeze is the best fit for Auburn. I still believe that. You have a bunch of message board heroes, is what we call them, social media heroes, that love to just rant and rave about things they have no clue about. But I would think Auburn would be insane not to hire him. He is exactly what they're looking for. As far as Lane Kiffin, the circus is over as far as is he staying, is he's going. He's got his new contract, and now it's time to hit the portal. And so that's what it's all about. It opens on December the 5th. And, they've got to address some needs at tight end, at wide receiver, a rush in, and a linebacker or two. As I told you, they only lose 4 starters on the team. So they've got the bulk of their rotation guys returning that season. They got a quarterback. If you look at the West next year, Alabama loses their quarterback. I would think Auburn, I don't know. It depends on who they get back in there as coach. They could possibly change quarterbacks. Then you look at Arkansas, they lose their quarterback. It's A&M is going to return their quarterback. Ole Miss will return their quarterback. And then Mississippi State, I would imagine that will come back there at Mississippi State. So they're in a good position to make a run next year. Hopefully, another SEC West program doesn't have a coaching change. They're in the middle of the season and they come after Lane and we got to go through this all again. It would have been different if it would have been after the season was over, like right now, while the season was preparations for the bowl practices. But with the season still going on, the last 3 ball games was just an absolutely shit show, if I can say that. It was just it was a circus. You know, they went 0-3 during that. That doesn't surprise anyone. Hopefully everybody is better equipped if this happens again in the future. Does Lane have some fences to mend? I would say with some fans, he certainly does. But you know, we all know that wins heal all wounds. And right now, you know, it's all about getting in the transfer portal and closing out this high school class and filling those holes.
Yeah, I think you're making great points. And, you know, far be it from me, I think the most valuable lesson I ever was taught as a young reporter back at Channel 3 in Columbus on 13th Street, Columbus, Georgia, Channel 3, WRBL, News 3 on your side. And that was this. If you want to get the story, don't go ask the neighbor of the person that you want to talk to. Go knock on the person you want to talk to's door and ask him. Because every layer that it passes along down the line, there's more of an opportunity to fumble. What did Darryl Royal say about throwing the ball? There's only, you know, the options, 2 out of 3 of them are it's going to be incomplete. You know, he's not going to catch it. It's just, think about that. That's what's going on with Hugh Freeze. And I think Auburn people, if you talk about a guy that I think embraces wherever he's at. He's where is he from? Independence, Coldwater, Mississippi, down there. And I'm down there all the time. I mean, listen, I think this guy, no matter, I watched what you sent me last night, Yancy, in detail. My wife and I did. We watched the whole thing. That's powerful stuff. I mean, hey, guy, he's taken what he's done wrong, and people, there's a lot of stuff out there about him. Go find the truth, you know, and put that narrative to rest. Nobody's perfect, but it'd be fun to watch what he does. Yancy, this Ole Miss team, Quinshon Judkins, Zach Evans. Zach Evans going to stay or go?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question just yet. I would think it's probably 60-70%. He goes ahead and goes in the portal. You know, running back is definitely will have to be addressed this all season if he does go in the portal, and it still does. In the draft, and it will still need to be addressed even if he doesn't go in the draft. So they're in on 2 or 3 really top-notch, top 5 high school running backs in the country, and so you know we'll see what happens with Zach. But I would think the draft still have him as a top 100 pick. He's fallen from a top 50 to a top 100, but that's still top 3 round money, and anybody that can go in the top 3 rounds, I think you need to go ahead and take the money.
Yeah, he's a hell of a player out of Houston North Shore. And Quinshon Judkins, you were right about him. He can run between the tackles. He can do everything. And he's one of the best freshman running backs that we've seen in this league in a long time. Now, you mentioned about this tight end situation. You know, nobody's had a better hybrid tight end in the last 7-8 years than Evan Ingram at Ole Miss. And we thought Michael Trigg was going to be the answer. What's his health status?
Well, as you know, he broke his collarbone in game 3. He missed the next 7 games. And then after the Alabama game, he was cleared to start playing. And then he got suspended from the team. So he missed the last 2 games against Arkansas and State, not due to injury, but due to suspension. And that's still up in the air. I don't know. He's already used his portal. His one-time transfer for the portal. So I would hope that things get cleared up with him, you know, but regardless if he stays or goes, you know, Chad Kelly had a shoulder operation. There's some question about his health status for next year. Hudson Wolf, 4-star tight end out of Tennessee, still has his back injury. So even if he returns, they only have 1 scholarship. Kyron Heath, a redshirt freshman, is the only scholarship player that is not suspended and that is healthy right now. So they're going to have to pick up a tight end or 2. And that really hurt them. You know, they were using Jonathan Mingo as a tight end the last several games there. And it really hurt them, as we saw State was running a zero blitz the whole second half against Ole Miss, and that's when you could have used a tight end or two to pick up those blitzes. So they're going to have to address that, and that'll be one to keep an eye on. As you know, Lane loves tight ends. At Florida Atlantic, he had the I forgot the name for the tight end of the year, the specific name for it, but he had one there. And then, at Alabama, he had success at tight ends, and at Southern Cal he did as well. So it's something that has really been missing in his repertoire. But I think they're going to pick up probably one, possibly two portal tight ends. That would be my best guess.
Okay. Jimmy, jump in here on Rapid Fire Monday with Yancy Porter of the Rebel Yell Hotline.
Well, now it's cemented that Lane is going to be at Ole Miss for, you'd hope, at least 2 or 3 more seasons. What is going to be his upcoming itinerary in regard to recruiting, leading up to not only the early signing date for high school prospects, but also zeroing in on portal prospects? And how does that makeup come out of, in your estimation? Because I think maybe last year was around 14 and maybe 11, or maybe it was a little more than that from a high school prospect perspective. And then also, how are you seeing this change that was made during the offseason last year, where you can replace as many as 8 players via the transfer portal and it not add against that 25 limit in a year if those players leave the school to go to another school in the portal in good academic standing?
Well, that's a great question. Last year, they actually signed 17 portal players and 20 high school players. So that is 37. I don't know how the numbers worked out there, but, I would suspect, Jimmy, that they're going to probably sign 10 to 12 portal players and around 22, 23 high school players. They have 14 committed right now. 12 of them are in, the On 3 Sports top 250 players in the country. So they're doing really well in the high school ranks right now. They're being very selective. I would think that they're probably going to close out with maybe 2 to 3 more high school players, sign 16, 17 in the early signing period, and then, sign the rest, 7 to 9 in the late signing period, depending on really what they get in the portal here in this first portal wave that starts on December the 5th and ends on December the 12th. But I don't think they're going to go as heavy in the portal this year as they did last year. Like I said, they return 18 starters next year. So there's not that need. They don't have to go get a quarterback like they did last year. Maybe they pick up a quarterback. We'll see in the portal just to give some depth. There's rumors that 2 of the 3 guys, Luke Altmaier, I would heavily suspect to go in the portal. That was the backup quarterback, and then Kincaid Dent could go ahead and graduate. So that's going to leave them. They've got 1 high school quarterback committed, Marcel Reed, a top 250 prospect out of Nashville, to groom for the future. And I suspect they'll probably get 1 portal guy there just for depth situations for next season. And then, like I said, I think they lose 2 offensive linemen. They could come back, but I doubt they're going to come back. Talking about Nick
Yancy, hold those thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. I want you to finish on this, just on the depth chart. Right after this quick break, more with Yancy Porter after this.
Hey, y'all. It's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Yancy Porter, you were on a roll on that depth chart for Ole Miss. Let's keep it rolling.
Yeah, most likely they've got two offensive linemen that have their COVID year back, so to speak. There, Jeremy James and Nick Broker. I think Nick will go ahead and go in the draft. He's pretty much a consensus top 100 pick in the NFL draft. Jeremy James is in that 100 to 150 range. He possibly could come back. And then, they've got to go like Alabama, Jimmy. They didn't have really those difference makers at the wide receiver spot that they've had in so many past years. And that's something Lane's really got to address. Defensive end, they've got to get a rush in. They need a big-time rush in, and then a linebacker or two. They're pretty set there in the secondary, maybe pick up a corner. But I'm thinking 10 to 12, Jimmy, in the portal, and then probably 20 to 22 in the high school ranks.
Well, you look at that depth chart. You talked about the 12 defensive linemen going to come back for next year. That gives, 85, 90% of your team coming back? I mean, and we know there's going to be guys going to the portal. Now, just to be clear, December 5th opens up a 45-day window in the portal. And then in May, there's another window that opens. I don't know how many days that is, but outside of that, you can't just up and transfer and go into the portal at the drop of a hat, can you?
No, as well you shouldn't. They've really got to get a hold of it, right? You can't have this much turnover and everybody just flip-flop around from schools whenever they want to. You gotta know what you're going to do at the end of the season, and then they'll give the guys that go through spring training and see where they are on the depth chart. And a lot of them that are not happy with where they stand in the rotation or their minutes will try to find a new home.
Well, the portal, in the case of Ole Miss, they were the number 1 or 2 class last year. And Jimmy and y'all were talking about those numbers, about 35 or so. You can do whatever you want, can't you, as long as you don't exceed the 85 limit. So you may have a year when you bring in 35, but you got to do the math, and enough guys will transfer out. It tends to work itself out, I think. I don't know how many players Ole Miss and the average team in the SEC and college football are carrying, but very few teams even have 85 guys on scholarship at any given time. 75 to 80 is more like the average, isn't it?
Yeah, every coach likes to have a few extra scholarships to give for the next class. So it's rarely at 85. And in Lane's case, you got to remember he uses a pro mentality throughout his program, and that also goes to his rotation. He is not much on playing a lot of players. He has the pro mentality, right? The starters are going to play until their tongue, falls off, and the rotation guys are going to come in, and there's not really a lot of third and fourth string guys that get on the field unless there's injuries occurs. So there's going to be several of the Ole Miss players that are going to want more minutes, and they're going to go to different places, probably more than the normal school because of how Lane uses his rotations. He just doesn't play a whole lot of players.
Okay. That makes sense. But he is the master at it. Jimmy, jump back in here with Yancy Porter.
Yeah, Yancy, the Mississippi Junior College football arena over so many decades has produced some great Power Five conference players. And I'm curious, with Lane entering his fourth year, how his relationship has evolved with the Mississippi junior college coaches. And, is that an area where, Ole Miss is getting more involved? Because, again, they just produce a lot of really good players every year.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jimmy. And I don't really know the relationship, so to speak, without my boots on the ground anymore with the recruiting arena. But he signed one JUCO player last year, Reginald Hughes out of Northeast. He's got a JUCO offensive tackle out of Southwest Community College committed right now that is signed in December. That's about it. So I guess that's two players in 2 years. So I'm sure there's some Mississippi junior college coaches that wish that Lane was more involved, but sadly with the portal now, people are just reflushing these college players all around the country, and that's really hurt the junior college players. But at some point, you have to have new players coming into the colleges, right? So I think that will evolve again, and the junior colleges will be more of a factor in the future, not only for Ole Miss, but all of the colleges, because you can't, as I said, you have to have new players coming into college. So right now it's been a bad time to be a junior college player these last couple of years when the portal came into effect. But again, 1 to 2 more classes, and then they're going to have to start getting some new players into the colleges. So it's just kind of a bad timing right now for junior college prospects.
Looking at the state of Mississippi in high school football, in the last 3 or 4 years, there have been some incredible classes coming out. Of the top 10 players in state, top 12, how many of them is Ole Miss going to get, you think, when all the dust settles? I know they've got some now committed, whatever, but give me a number.
Well, right now they've got 4 out of the top 5 players in Mississippi committed. They're trying to flip the 5th one, Dante Dowell out of Picayune. They're also in heavily on Isaac Smith out of Itawamba AHS, safety there. So if they could get those 2 players, they would have gotten the top 6 players out of Mississippi. He's not going to be one of these guys that is going to sign 14 to 17 Mississippi players. He's always going to be in that 6 to 8 range. I suspect. Excuse me, tongue tied this morning.
Yeah.
But I think as he gets more endeavored here at Ole Miss, and he stays longer, and he builds more relationships within the high school coach community, that those numbers could go up. But I think right now you're still going to see around that 6 to 8 number on a good year. And, so that's where we are. Matt Luke came in, he really had the Mississippi made, where he was signing the bulk of his classes out of Mississippi, and got a lot of good players doing that way. But if you go back to the Hugh Freeze era, he's kind of Lane's doing pattern after what Freeze did. He's trying to cherry pick the state of Mississippi, and that's kind of what you're seeing from Lane.
All right, last question. If Hugh Freeze is introduced at the podium in the next 48 hours as Auburn's new coach, what do you think will be the first thing he does? You think he would want to – I know you don't want to put conditions on a coach. You think he wants to keep Cadillac on that staff?
No question. No question he would. He knows the value that Cadillac holds for Auburn and the state of Alabama in general. I think that would be a really bad move for whoever the coach to not keep Cadillac on that staff. But you got to have somebody that is comfortable in their own skin. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
A lot of new coaches might be weary, thinking there could be some future turmoil because people wanted Cadillac as the coach. And so you got to have somebody that's very comfortable in their own skin. And that's definitely something Hugh is. And yes, 100% he would keep him.
And I got a feeling that Hugh Freeze, if he's introduced in the next 48 to 72 hours as Auburn's new head football coach, and I don't know anything, I'm just Joe Sixpack, man. But if he is, I got a feeling he's going to be Auburn's football version of Bruce Pearl, a guy that's getting a second chance at a big-time program. And something tells me that the synergy between him and Bruce Pearl will be beyond powerful. But I'll someone like you that actually knows Hugh Freeze, has been around him, it's very important what you say, because words are like bullets. You can't take them back. You say good things about him, you speak the truth, my friend. So
he'll be the next Pat Dye at Auburn if he goes there. He'll be there 12 to 15, 16 years, and will win multiple SEC championships, compete for national championships yearly, and he'll go down as one of the greatest Auburn coaches of all time. If the Auburn people will just quit the hysteria on social media, let Cohen do his job, give Hugh a chance, get to know him. All this fake Christian stuff is just a bunch of baloney. I've never even heard the guy say a curse word in 20, 25 years of being around him. Just a really, really good person, good guy, unbelievable coach. Players love to play for him, and coaches love to coach for him. He'll be very, very successful at Auburn. It would be a monstrous mistake for Auburn not to hire Hugh Freeze.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Hugh Freeze isn't even announced earlier than that. I don't know. My gut feeling is Auburn needs somebody that loves Auburn, and you get him, and you have people like Cadillac, Zach Etheridge, Christian Robinson. Auburn needs people there that are not there to just, pick up a check. And I like what you say about that. But I tell you what, Ole Miss, at least we'll be able to go to Oxford without getting hollered at. And but I know North Mississippi, some of the best people in America. So that's going to be interesting. Yancy, what are y'all talking about on the Rebel Yell hotline tonight? We'll let you go.
Well, we're going to kind of recap the Egg Bowl and go over the portal like we did here today and talk about this basketball season. Ole Miss has really, really turned their team around from last year to this year, as the whole SEC. How about Alabama's win last night against North Carolina? What a great finish. And we're going to go full steam ahead in the basketball. It's hoop season.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited about it. It's going to be fun. I'm ready. Yancy, thank you so much for your time. You've been a journeyman, a yeoman journalist here for days and days and days. We'll give you a few days off. Talk to you later in the week. Okay.
Thank you, guys. Everybody have a blessed day. Thank you.
You do too. Always love hearing that from Yancy Porter. All right, let's head east on I-40 over to Knoxville. Rocky Top, Tennessee Tailgate Report. Mark Hamm. Mark, as I told Tony Barnhart in the first hour, people try to say, well, the rain affected Tennessee at Georgia. Well, I was watching that game with Granny, Kurt Hamm, Max Hamm, all kinds of Hams, Audrey Hamm, all the Hams up in Clarksville Saturday night. And it was raining cats and dogs, and it didn't have the least bit of effect on Tennessee. I think Tennessee just scored again on a 75-yard touchdown run. But, hey, Jimmy up here and Tony Barnhart and I had this discussion in the first hour. Hey, who's your number 5 team? That's the team Tony Barnhart said to watch out for, because that's who the committee, if somebody in front of them slips, is getting in the playoffs. Is it Ohio State? Is it Alabama? Is it Tennessee? What say you, as many famous people will say?
Yeah, that's a good question. There was a lot of movement over the weekend. I think I predicted that LSU would get beat and then Clemson would get beat, and that kind of happened. So, I don't know. I think we're ahead of Alabama because we beat them. As far as Ohio State, they got beat as bad as we got beat by South Carolina, and South Carolina beat Clemson. So a lot of movement. I don't know. I think people want to see us in the playoffs because of our offense. We had, 1 or 2 games that we kind of sputtered a little bit, but I don't know. That's a good question. I have no idea at this point, what's going to happen with all that.
Well, if you had to pick and you were on the committee and you weren't Mark Hamm, you were Felix Grundy, just some guy out in Olathe, Kansas, who would you put as your number 5 based on what you know from this past weekend and the whole season?
I'd put Tennessee there. I put us at number 1, actually. No, I'm kidding. I would put us at,
I knew Jimmy would get a kick.
I'd put us at 5. I'll go with 5. It's been a crazy season, and I think, we're as good as anybody in the country at the right, on the right day. I think there were some issues that, in that South Carolina game that caused, some infighting or whatever might have been going on there. Who knows? But, I'd put us at number 5.
Yeah, and I don't know what went on before the South Carolina game, but I know this: South Carolina didn't just lay it to y'all. They went up there and won 31-30 at Clemson. First time Clemson's lost a home game since 2016. But this is exciting. This stuff that's going on right now. Tennessee got a 5-star commitment from a defensive lineman the other day. It's starting to happen up there. Jimmy, jump in here with Mark Hamm, Rocky Top Tennessee Tailgate Report. And we did find out, how does Smokey get to the games? And we're going to tell you after Jimmy's question.
No, I just thought that when I saw Herb Street's ranking Saturday night, he had Alabama at 5. And you look at them, you have 2 losses on the last play of the game in 2 of the most hostile environments in college football, with a quarterback at least coming in to that game had not taken a snap in practice in 2 weeks, didn't throw a pass, and that was that way for like 4 weeks. And now I think offensively, at least, they're playing at a level that you expect to see from Alabama. And then you throw in the fact, and Tony mentioned this, that with Hendon Hooker out, that is taken into consideration by the committee, especially the coaches. And that's a huge, huge loss. But like Ohio State, though, when you have a 4-touchdown loss that soon or that close to the announcement of the 4 teams that will be in the playoff, man, that's a big hurdle to overcome, especially when it occurred to a team that got beat by 5 touchdowns 7 days earlier. So there's no end to all these different developments that happen every week. I mean, USC, they're playing the team that beat them in the regular season for the Pac-12 championship Saturday night. And that could very well happen because USC has no defense. And by the way, if anybody's wondering about the Heisman Trophy, Caleb Williams is going to win this thing by a mile. His performance against UCLA and Notre Dame, I mean, it was a combination of Johnny Football and Kyler Murray. I mean, you talk about somebody that has carried a team all season. It's Caleb Williams, and because their defense is absolutely horrible. But I think that Ohio State loss, though, was so damaging that I think that TCU's actually put them in a position with, I think, 6 victories over ranked teams that they're in no matter what. As long as the game is somewhat close against Kansas State, I know they would be losing to a 3-loss Kansas State team. That Big 12, I think, has been the second strongest power conference. So I think they're in. Yeah, it's going to be that number 4 spot if USC loses. If USC wins,
hold that thought, Jimmy. Hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back because you're making great point about the Big 12, and I absolutely agree. Mark Hamm, Jimmy Hodge, Rob Browne, right after this.
Now more than ever, it is so important to shop local and to buy American. For 60 years, Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company has been on the historic Collierville Square, and we strive to sell made in the USA products when available. With over 7,000 pairs of Western boots and work boots in stock for men and women, come and see our huge selection of clothing, jeans, and accessories from top brands made in the USA. Please support local business and come shop with us at Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. God bless the USA.
All right, great conversation going. Jimmy had great points about that top 4, and I'm with him about TCU. But I'm going to say my number 5 team would be Tennessee after what happened over the weekend. I'd put them up there because of the win against Alabama, because if you're going to try and make an argument for Alabama to come in there, you got to put Tennessee ahead of them because of the head-to-head, and they won on the road at LSU, and Alabama lost on the road at LSU. And I don't know what happens, though, to strength of schedule. A&M beating LSU, and let's give credit to Mark Hamm. Mark, last week on this here show, what did you say would happen in College Station? And you had another one that you picked as well.
Well, I just looking at it. I mean, Jimbo doesn't want to lose his job. Jimbo's got a lot of talent, and if you watch the game, he had a lot of people that were hurt, and he got a lot of people back, and their running back just went nuts. He ran for
A-chain.
200 yards, just went crazy. So, and it was their bowl game. I mean, they didn't have anything to lose; they had everything to prove. LSU didn't want to lose. Obviously, they're in the they had more to lose than A&M did, I guess, at this point. So I really thought A&M would win. I think, they got some work to do. They got a young quarterback. But look, I really thought they were going to win that game because I think I told Jimmy last week after, watching LSU and looking at if you look at their book of business, so to speak, even in their wins, they weren't blowout wins. I mean, they barely squeaked by on a bunch of people, and they didn't really play anybody, so to speak. I mean, they beat Alabama on the last second, but that was their biggest win. So I thought they were going to win, and I really thought South Carolina would win because I thought Clemson is kind of a house of cards and has been for the last couple of years, and they always seem to squeak in. But I don't know. I just kind of had a feeling that both of them would win, and that's kind of what happened. So,
well, the weekend carnage. I mean, Michigan goes in and pounds Ohio State. I actually took Michigan to cover in that game just because I was like, and Jimmy was concerned the way they played against Illinois, but I sometimes think that's a pullback, that you're slowing down to get faster. I just go back to Friday when Roman Harper was on the show with us, and I mentioned about the brisket caper at the Tennessee-Georgia game, and I said, Mark had 3 briskets for you. And he goes, oh, and I was talking to him off the air. He's like, it's just crazy on game day.
Crazy, yeah.
And so we're going to get that up there because Roman gave his Roman Power Index, RPI. He pointed out Ryan Day doesn't show up in the big games and doesn't but he picked Tennessee to go 10-2 this year. So, Mark, Tennessee's at 10-2 right now. What a stomping of Vanderbilt Saturday. No matter what, Tennessee is going to have a top flight recruiting class. And the fact that they're, along with Alabama and Ohio State, the 3 teams most mentioned as that number 5 team, that's what you want to be in that conversation for every year, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't been in that conversation in 15 years. I mean, I said before the beginning of the season, I thought we might go 8-4, and to go 10-2. I mean, I'll take it. I didn't really think we'd lose to South Carolina. That wasn't one of my losses in the 8-4, but it's college football. But look, you know what? It's been a great year for us. I'll take it. It's much better than what we had in the past few years, and I think we'll continue to expand on that. With the quarterback position, how do you replace Hendon Hooker? But I think Joe Milton has a lot to work on, but we also got a 5-star that's coming in that could easily be the guy that could start. So, if Josh Heupel can win with what he's been dealt, and he's been able to do that, just wait until we get more players that are actually a little more talented. And if we can, really work on that defense and that secondary, I think we'll be a team that'll be tough to beat over time because, it was funny. I was watching some of the game this week, some of the different games this week. And if you notice, a lot of people were, and I'll tell you what happens. So whenever we have a play and we get tackled, the guys get up immediately and run to the referee, throw the ball to him for another play. And I actually watched a few teams doing that. So, a lot of people are probably going to try to copy that. It's a whole different level. They've got to, be ready to do that, and everyone's got to be in the right place. But I did see a lot of that going on this week with other teams to kind of, probably copy kind of what we're doing. It's hard to keep the defense on the field, and it's hard for them to get lined up if you're just running play after play after play.
No, it is. And I think what I've seen out of Tennessee is, God, they can run the ball. Offensive line play, and you talked about the defense, the secondary. That's why you go recruit more players, and they'll do it. Jimmy, jump back in.
Well, I got to tell you, after South Carolina just got destroyed by Florida in the swamp, I really think that when Beamer and his staff got back to Columbia, I think they spent all day Sunday and probably a good portion of Monday. I think they actually just took Tennessee's offense and employed it on the practice field that week, because that offense they ran against Tennessee was nowhere even remotely similar to the offense they'd been running all year. They'd been using motion against Tennessee. They were running the speed sweep, with the wide receiver. They were lining guys up in different positions on every play, and you could see the Tennessee defenders looking at their coaching staff on the sideline. We hadn't seen any of this stuff before, and what they did, they created those busted coverages in the secondary that Tennessee's receivers had been doing all year long. And then, I thought at halftime Tennessee was hanging with them, but I thought they would win the game, that South Carolina would just kind of wear down. But, man, that offense, they just kept rolling, and now they've carried it into just a really strong end of the season. I really think that Tennessee game opened up a lot of eyes across the nation to elite recruits, to quarterbacks, watching the game that Rattler had and the game those wide receivers had, and the fact that Beamer came from Oklahoma, that wide open offense they ran under Stoops and then Lincoln Riley. And I think South Carolina is going to be considered by a lot of top skill position players at the high school level from all over the country.
Well, South Carolina, no doubt. I don't know what Spencer Rattler and Jimmy, Mark, are both of y'all as lost as I am about some of these guys? Are they ever going to leave? I mean, just because we insist on Sunday that you stay until Tuesday doesn't mean we're serious. I mean, some of these guys have been there 6 and 7 years, and I'm not joking. It seems like they've been there forever. But Hendon Hooker made it clear the other night when he was asked on the sidelines, he's getting ready for the draft. So this guy, I don't know, he's been out, 5-6 years? Is he working on a second degree? Joe Milton, Mark, you heard what Jimmy said earlier. The committee takes into account injured players on where because I don't, and that's where I think Tennessee's going to get hurt. And I hate that. But Joe Milton the other night, how many times was he 4 or 5 yards over the receiver? That guy's wide open. But he looks better than he did last year. But give me your top 6, Mark, if you're on the committee voting that'll come out tomorrow night.
Oh gosh, man.
College football playoff committee, that is.
Well, I mean, it's going to be Georgia, Michigan, TCU. We were debating over the weekend about Ohio State. I don't know if they're on the outside looking in, if they're in. I think Alabama, Tennessee. Gosh, who else is in there that I'm forgetting?
Southern Cal, TCU.
Yeah, TCU for sure. Southern Cal, I don't know. I mean, maybe because they may win out, but I don't think they're any good. I think they'll get blown out by somebody. So, I think it's definitely going to be Georgia, Michigan, TCU, and then who do you put in 4 and 5?
That's what we're asking you for. It's what we pay you the big money for.
I don't know. Well, I'll be honest with you because I'll be honest with you. Look, I would say Tennessee, but you're right. Without Hendon Hooker, we're a different football team. And Joe Milton's first start, it was raining. He did overthrow some people. I mean, it was raining the whole game, but you still got to make those throws. But we are going to be a different team because the guys only played about 30 snaps the whole year. I mean, you lose a Heisman candidate. I mean, you're going to be a different team, but. We ran the ball pretty well. So, who knows? Yeah. Who knows, when it's going to play.
Yeah. Jimmy, Mark is pretty darn good at picking these games. Utah took Southern Cal out earlier this season. Are you going to be watching that Pac-12 game Saturday? Or is it Friday night?
I think it's Friday night, but no question. I mean, Utah beat USC on a 2-point conversion with less than a minute left, but I tell you what, USC's defense, admittedly, is terrible. But I'm telling you,
woeful.
if they get into the playoff, they're going to put points on the board against anybody. I mean, and sure, I think a lot of those teams can outscore USC, but defensively, whoever they play, most likely Georgia, if they win on Friday night, USC's in. But his defensive staff is going to spend some sleepless nights getting ready for that game, because this Caleb Williams is something else. And they've got a really good a set of running backs. Their wide receivers are very good, getting that Jordan Addison from Pitt. I mean, I think they brought in 23, 24 portal players, and it seems like all of those guys have been important contributors. So offensively, they're going to be a handful. But again, I think this season, 2022, will be remembered as the year that we really needed that 12-team playoff, because there's so many teams that have a case, that deserve an opportunity on the field to see if they're good enough to win the national championship, or at least be in a position to be there at the end.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. Mark, Hamm, 12-team playoff this year. Think about the interest. And I brought this up with Tony Barnhart in the first hour. We watched the game over at Jerry Kirby's with Rebecca and everybody. Thanksgiving, about 20 of us in there eating absolute multiple food comas, okay? And I'm watching football with Jerry Kirby. That guy knows football. It's unbelievable. He should be like at the Pentagon underground deciphering codes. God, he knows football. And I'm watching that. You know how many people watched that Cowboys-Giants game Thursday, Mark Hamm? 42 million. I think it's the most ever to watch a regular season game. College football, professional NFL football. Now we got the USFL coming back in the spring. This is why there's hope for America. I mean, the interest in football and the Tennessee crowd, Vanderbilt Stadium, it was packed and it was pouring rain the entire game. I noticed how tight the crowd shots were, Mark, because it was all orange and white. Did you notice that? I noticed it. So did Kurt Hamm. He was noticing it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically a home game. I mean, you've got a lot of players, and fans. You know, obviously for Memphis, it's half the drive to there. You know, as opposed to getting to Knoxville, and people from Knoxville want to go to Nashville, and everybody wants to go to Nashville, right, and go down to Tootsie's and have a good time. So, you know. Poor Vanderbilt. I mean, you know, they had a couple of decent wins, but I was watching the game on Saturday night, and I was like, God, they look like a high school team out there. I mean, they were awful. I mean, I know we were good, but, man, they were just terrible.
Yeah, well, you talk about a grinder schedule in that last 3 games. Playing at Kentucky, who plays that smash mouth style of football, and then to beat Florida. That's a tremendous credit to their coaching staff. Oh, yeah. So you've had a 2-game winning streak, and here comes Tennessee rolling into town in not a very friendly frame of mind. And, you know, they came out there and they took care of business early, and it was that's a pretty tough 3-game stretch for Vandy. I mean, I got to give them a little bit of but they were just overwhelmed at the line of scrimmage, and a situation like that really puts an exclamation point or the focus on teams that have the lack of depth. And you get to game 12 in the SEC, man, you not only have to be 2 deep, it can really help you to be 3 deep. And Vandy, I think, is okay, you know, at the ones, but beyond that, I mean, it's pretty shaky, and that's their big task going forward in coming seasons.
Yeah, it is. Mark Hamm, Tennessee, they got to get that depth, 2 and 3 deep on the front 7. That's what hurt them. But looking at their recruiting class, they're getting it. They're get those up front linemen. It all starts up front. You get a good pass rush, your secondary can look good, can't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think we're going to definitely get there with the 5-star commitment we got. And I think there'll be a lot more players that'll be committing, because, you know, they see an opportunity, especially on the defensive side, to come in and start and, you know, to do well. So, again, you know, our Achilles heel was our defense and our secondary. But, you know, look, I think, you know, with what we're doing and where we're headed, you know, am I disappointed? You know, we didn't beat South Carolina, and we're not rolling in. Yeah, I mean, that kind of took the wind out of the sails. But look, we're still 10-2. We still had a great year. And I think we're going to be, pretty good next year, I think.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. The SEC, one thing about it, is that everybody else is pushing. Auburn going to name a new coach here in the next day, next 6 hours, maybe, next 3 hours. I don't know. But they're going to get one. I thought, before the season, Tennessee would win 10 games. But I thought if they were 10-0 late in the season or 9-1, 10-0, they'd win them all. I just didn't see the South Carolina game coming. But that just tells you, and Jimmy and all of us, we talked about it every day. Top to bottom, it's the strongest league. And I've absolutely been saying this all year with Ken Capps and Bo Carter. Great people we have out in Texas covering Big 12 and SEC. Big 12 is right there behind the SEC. And we go over, Hilltop Liquors every day, back and forth over Crowley's Ridge in Wynn, Arkansas. There's the frog up there. And Audrey's going to dress him in a horned frog uniform. Fear of the frog. He's cold, but it's going to be fun to watch on this committee. But Mark, thanks so much for joining us. Jimmy, Tony Barnhart, Yancy Porter, all of our guests, go out and help somebody with the expectation to get nothing in return. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Don't give to get, give to give. And remember, we're here with you every Monday through Saturday, 6 days a week. www.sidelines.live. 680thefan.com, the podcast part, and Kicks 96.3, Alexander City, Lake Martin, Radio Alabama Group. More coming. Stay tuned. Check us out, sidelines.live. Until then, have a great day. We are out of here.